So, you know, it's quite hard being a threatened species ambassador when all the threatened species are tanking. At least 4,000 of our species in New Zealand are classified as threatened or at risk, and of 900 of those are classified as at risk of extinction. At least 50 bird species have become extinct since humans arrived here, and possums, rats, stoats are the main mammalian predators, but there are others. There are cats, there are hedgehogs, there are browsers, I won't say tar. But there are a range of introduced species that our native wildlife simply can't keep up with and can't cope with in the speed in which these things have arrived, and we owe them the chance to survive in this country and in this world, because most of our stuff only belongs here in New Zealand. We love to be number one in New Zealand. You know this because anytime you watch the news and some poor celebrity steps off a plane, some reporter shoves a microphone in their face and says, "What do you think of New Zealand?" We love that we were the first to conquer Everest, we were the first to give women the vote. We are number one. So by the way, for a while there, I managed a bunch of scientists, and I did quite a lot of science communication training. This is a no-no. Don't ever put a graph up like that. I know there's scientists in the room. This is the worst kind of table you could put on a PowerPoint, but I just want to point something out. We love to be number one in New Zealand. We are number one. When it comes to the proportion of threatened species compared to other countries, we are number one. It is not all sunshine and lollipops out there, and it's really important that we know that so that we can take action to save the things. And there are new-ish dangers. I say ish because some of us, like Sam, have known about this for a while. 133,000 is the amount of Olympic swimming pools worth of water coming off New Zealand glaciers every year thanks to climate change. When I grew up in Ara Kākāriki, Mount Cook and Twizel, there was no lake in the bottom of the Tasman Glacier. It is so big now that people run tour guiding jet boat cruises through it. And climate refugees aren't only going to be humans. This is the cobble skink. It lives in the west coast. It is called the cobble skink because it lives within the cobbles, the sort of cobble type stones, within a dynamic beach environment where there are going to be surge tides and big storm events, and that's okay because these cobble skinks have, I think actually, someone was telling me they actually kind of like go down and stick their head underwater and hold on for dear life, or they get out of the way. However, if you compare the accruing impact, the cumulative impact of the sea level rise, the storm events, as a consequence of climate change, and the fact that we've put a tar seal road and then really intensive agriculture on the other side of that road, these stones were designed to spill out everywhere and then come back again, and then spill out everywhere and then come back again. These guys have got nowhere to go. And in Cyclone Fehi, which was 2 years ago now, maybe 3, we actually had to go and rescue every last cobble skink we could find and take them out of the wild. So this species as we know it only exists in captivity now, off display in Auckland Zoo until such time that we can find them a home. But they are essentially climate refugees. And it is happening right in front of us, and it is happening now. Oh, I bet you thought this was going to be an inspiring talk. And we see headlines like this all the time. Exotic plants poised to invade New Zealand countryside as climate changes. Climate change pollution threatens New Zealand's marine environment, and nature is talking and we're not listening, I think is the message there. As a complete aside, I am now the responsible budget holder for weed control across the East and South Island, and I became rather incensed by the your backyard kind of branding that was appearing on the Stuff website, which kept showing a very nice lady standing in a field of lupins. So I have spoken to the owner of Stuff, and I haven't seen that for a while, because that's not our story. Our story isn't about protecting pests. Maybe that's a pertinent message this week. I'm not talking about that. So, and then COVID happened. So COVID-19 was an eye-opener on all fronts. But what I noticed was that we slowed down. We slowed down, we spent time in the outdoors, we noticed things, and we gave nature some space. You know, I'm a little bit heartbroken at the moment because under COVID I don't know that I've ever worked so hard in my life under lockdown, but I got to take my dog for a walk every lunchtime, and I got to count the birds that were around me. I've kind of hurtled back into a corporate working environment, and I feel like I'm at risk of losing that, because that was important, and we should hold that and hang on to it for dear life. It has now just occurred to me that I wrote myself some notes that I should probably be looking at. So, yeah, that would have been a good thing to say. Interestingly, according to Colin Muscali, views to the Birds Online website soared by 42% during level 4 lockdown, because all of a sudden New Zealanders were out there paying attention to stuff. What is this bird? What is happening? In Waipara, I got an emergency call twice. Once once a knock on my door, which became very awkward, and once from a local farmer for the same bird, which was a juvenile shag that had blown over cormorant, that had blown over in a storm, blown over Mount Cass, and just kind of stood there on the road, was a bit hungry, didn't have enough energy to get up again. I chased him into a paddock. I thought that he flew away, and then 2 days later I got a call from the farmer to say, could you come and get him? But I can't imagine a time where one of the local farmers would ring me and say, could you come and get this shag? But people were tuned into the wildlife, and I think that's a privilege and a benefit that we shouldn't lose sight of, and we should try to hold on to where we can. And you saw it every day, right? Because there were articles all the time about the tui and the fantails that had taken over Langton Key, and what was happening out there with the wildlife, and why were the orca coming in? And I don't know if there might have been a bit of that, but it might have just been that we sat quietly, and for a minute we were a human being and not a human doing. And I wonder whether that might have actually been the thing that we were noticing. So now I want to talk about national identity. So the great thing really, so despite all the depressing, bumming out stuff that I've talked to you about, the key that we have in New Zealand is national identity. We are a young country, and consequently, despite the fact that most of us now live in towns and cities and work in towns and have a kind of corporate lifestyle, we totally identify with the land. We associate ourselves as people of the mountains, of the land and the sea, and that is our opportunity, because it actually defines us as New Zealanders more than any other country in the world. And some of you may have heard me speak before about the studies that show that New Zealanders are an outlier around the world in terms of how we as citizens define ourselves as being connected to the land, connected to nature. That's our opportunity, and we should grab it with everything we've got. Because the challenge is, there is a giant disconnect between our national identity. We love the nature, we're all Kiwis, we want to, protect things, we're the people of the land. Except, and this is a Lakeland piece of research, Kiwis believe that the native biodiversity is in good shape, despite 2,800 species, and another couple of thousand to that, in decline. So there's something missing. There's a disconnect. We are a bit apathetic in thinking that everything is tickety-boo, somebody else is looking after it. When I get up and tell people that without pest control, 19 out of 20 Kiwi chicks die before they're 1 year of age, nobody believes me. But that is a true fact, pretty much across the board for all of our 5 Kiwi species, now 14 Kiwi types, where we don't do pest control. Only one of them makes it past 1 year of age. How can we promote ourselves as Kiwis to the world if we can't even look after the thing we named ourselves for? And when we don't live up to our national identity, Is this who we are? We actually have a duty to make it true. Kind of like that one. Probably not getting so many of the Lord of the Rings tourists right now. So last year I was privileged to attend the IPBIS, that was that mouthful thing that I said over a glass of wine, which is the Intergovernmental Science and Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And we got to hear from a lot of pretty amazing people. And so if you wonder what IPBIS is, if you know what the IPCC is, the Intergovernmental Panel of Science and Policy Platform on Climate Change, this is the nature version of that. And when our friends at IPBIS tell us that unless we take drastic action, we're set to lose 1 million out of the 8 million species on Earth, we must understand we're in a crisis. As Greta Thunberg says, we should act as if our house is on fire, because it is. And so I guess that'll be kind of the guts of my talk, right? We have this perfect storm of a biodiversity crisis, a global pandemic, a global community, if you like, in New Zealand. We all like to jet off to other places, now nested within our country. What are we going to do to make it true?